things are definitely not going to plan. This is not an update I really wanted to do, but you know, it's me trying to figure things out, really, me trying to work out what is not going right. I mean, it all started with something really small, really. I was going to try and use this canister filter that I still had. And I thought, you know what, I will buy loads of tubing, and I can turn the dial and I can end up watering the plants with it. Well, it was too short. The cable was too short. Now that is not a big deal at all. I know that. I did end up getting some that was the right length, even though after that I sort of had a new plan. So they say bad luck comes in threes. You know, I also was doing water change, and this may have caused some of the later problems that I kind of saw. I was doing a water change, chucked the hose in, took a video of it just because I thought I would. Came back a little bit after, which you can see now, and the pond was even more dirty than when I had done the water change. Absolutely filthy. And what I'd done was I'd stuck the hose in the lily, so it was blasting out all of the soil. So after repotting it, potting that back in, I know that I've released a lot of nutrients into that pond. It was going to take a while for me to, maybe even another water change, another couple, to really sort that out, because my filter, let's face it, was a small canister filter and not keeping up with the job. I've said in the previous videos that I'm potentially going to use this filter that was given to me and try and sort that out. But the pond was absolutely filthy. You know, I'd just done a water change. That's not what you want to see. You want to see a nice clean pond after that. So I'm still going ahead with the plan to build a small pond inside the shed so that I can house top view ranchu. And because of that, and because of, like what I said, you know, the pond's a bit dirtier than I'd like it to be, I know that I need another filter. It's not shown in this video now, this 3D image of what the pond shed, I guess we could call it, is going to be like, but I think I'll end up having the filter housed inside the shed, and it's all so that I can keep some top view ranchu. Absolutely love them, been wanting them for 10 to 12 years, I'd imagine. So what did I do? I went online. Wanted to try and do things DIY as much as possible. I ended up finding someone online who had a free pond filter, and they said, you know, no problem, you can come and grab it tonight, you know, I'm glad it's getting use. So I did, and this was it. I have actually shown it in a previous video, but this was the filter. This is when I went and picked it up. It needed a bit of work, cobwebs and all. So I thought the first thing to do is to fill it up. Let's see whether it works, whether it holds water. And it did to a certain point. It had some brush filters in the first chamber, followed by some biometer in the middle actually. And what I really liked about it was the dual outlet pipes, because if something got clogged, I knew there was a backup. So that was really what was pushing me to try and get this working. So I've run some water through it. Everything looked okay actually, you know. In fact, the seals were quite old, but they still looked like it was working absolutely fine. So, you know, just thought I'd go with it. It's one of those things where I suppose if you don't test it, you don't try it, you're never going to know. And that's what I decided to do. Now, I did notice that this sort of drainage pipe at the bottom was a bit rusted up, and I thought, well, that's not the end of the world. I can always siphon from the bottom in the future. But what I didn't bank on was that actually it was going to be leaking a bit. I'll show that in a minute. I come back and you can see, but I knew that this type of filter could house loads and loads of biometer, so it could be exactly what I was after. I even thought about building a little shelf out of egg crate so I could have some filter floss in it, because that's something I like to change regularly. So filled it up and left it. You know, what is it about having a pond, I guess, that, you know, you're always trying to solve problems, and it's kind of my fault because I'm trying to do things as cheap as possible. Like the pond I built in the first place was made out of fence posts, but like I said, I came back in the morning, everything had dried apart from the patch underneath the outlet. So I thought, I'm going to go to the shop, I'm going to get myself some parts. What I was looking for was some bulkheads, I was looking for some rubber gaskets, and I couldn't really find any in my kind of local aquarium shop. So I went to one a little bit further afield, but it was brilliant. They ended up having this box full of little bits, little kind of extra bits that they've obviously collected over the years. Really nice shop. I'm going to say what it's called actually. It's called the Little Fish Shop. And they had some nice goldfish there as well. You know, not the kind of real fancy varieties, but I always like to have a look at the goldfish while I'm there. I think everyone would if you're stopping for a small part. So I found what I was after, some rubber gaskets and a bulkhead and a hose tail that I could cut down. So the plan was that it's going to eventually filter this pond because it needs a bit more, and it also needs it's going to be used for the new pond as well. So there's the filter. Doesn't look the prettiest in the world, but I went about starting to try and change it. So I've installed the new bulkhead at the bottom, and that was because the drain was leaking. I tightened it up, you know, drilled a hole a little bit the right size, tightened it up, all seemed to be going fine. Now, an idea that someone had in the shop that I was talking to was to attach a little tap to the end of using some of at the end of the hose tail, using some of the, I think 25mm ribbed hosing. So therefore I can then drain the filter whenever I want. So that's what I did. I cut a bit off. I'd got plenty of it. Obviously I bought loads earlier in the video to try and get my canister filter to reach the flower bed. So I started to cut the end of that off and I installed it. And I thought, it's a bit DIY, but that's the whole point. I can actually even move this from side to side and direct the waste into a bucket really easily. Brilliant, that's going to work fine. So I filled it up and wanted to see whether it worked. I thought it would, there's no reason why not, but as you can see, leaks. It was leaking out, and it was the pressure. I think it was the pressure from all that water sitting above it was just not working well. I did find that if I turned it off in a certain place, it would not leak as much, but it wasn't ideal, and it looked to me like it might actually end up popping off, which would not be good. But it was not working well, so I decided to sort of almost abandon that idea quite quickly. I drained the water into the flower bed. Plant's got a good water, so that's one positive from it. But I was starting to get a bit angry, or not angry, but a little bit disheartened about the whole thing. I'd found this filter, thought it would work really well for what I was after. I'd been on various different shops trying to find the right things to get this to work, and I thought I had a solution, but it didn't seem to be going to plan. It wasn't leaking anywhere else, which is a good sign, I guess. So I did try and think maybe I could buy another bulkhead. I could maybe just connect both bulkheads together with a piece of tubing. That's not going to do anything. It was not going to leak out of there. So that was one idea I had. But that would mean back to the shop again, spending some more money on bulkheads. It was starting to add up. It was starting to add up to the point where I wasn't sure. And I'd got these parts anyway, so I drilled another hole. And what I'd planned to do eventually was, like I said, have some egg crate. I was making sure I was weld on everything as well. But I'd have some egg crate in that first chamber with filter floss on. That would allow me to really change that quite regularly. But I've had some weld on there, so I made sure I used that, because otherwise it would just keep popping off. And there it is. It's on the pond. It's on a crate just to see whether it works. And I turned it on, and it did work. But it was so loud. I would have to fit some more downpipes, and you can see actually it's leaking from the top. the water's shooting out so fast. What I'd need is some kind of spray bar to attach to that, with some holes in it. I could get a bit of pipe, drill some holes in it. I could do that, and it was all starting to look like something that it could work, but it was not going to plan really. Again, it had some leaks going from the hose. So I also, on top of that, had some problems with mosquitoes. We'll go back to the filter in a minute. Mosquitoes, I couldn't sit outside near the pond at night. There was tons of them. And I think what the problem was lack of water movement. They were also potentially breeding in the baskets of plants. So my dad keeps koi, had a spare pump, absolute overkill for what I needed, but I went and borrowed it to see whether this would work. Now, as I said, absolute overkill. Turned the pond into a jacuzzi. It was, you can't even see anything below that water, and it was bubbling up a lot. So, I think it would do the job. It's going to stop any mosquitoes wanting to land there. I heard that water movement makes sure that mosquitoes don't want to land and breed. So, I thought it was really, really loud as well. It was so loud, you could hear it from the house. I haven't got a big garden, but you shouldn't really be able to hear it from the house. So I turned it down a bit, and it was still very, very loud. But it was working. It was doing the job I wanted. So I left it there for a couple of days. Now, after all of that, I'm not sure what's happening next. I went to the shop to try and find some filter floss so I could potentially carry on with that filter. But so many things seem to have gone wrong. The pond's really dirty. That's my fault. The filter's not really being fixed to the quality that I would like and whether I can trust. So that's something I'm not sure whether I'm going to carry on with. But I did go to B&Q to get the parts for the spray bar if I needed it, if I decided to go that way. But when I was looking for the filter floss, I actually saw this black box filter from Cockney Koi. Now, I know that's what they use in star fisheries on pretty much every tub. I know that it works. I know it's easy to clean, so I might end up going in that direction if I sort of get frustrated with this DIY build. The pond is still dirty. I need to clean it for the fish's sake. So let's just, I guess, wait and see what happens.